I wonder if there's anything to add. These films are fake news. Well, since I've written it, I'm going to read it. Members of the jury, distinguished guests, colleagues, friends, chers amis. Je tiens d'abord à remercier Michel, mon collègue, mon patron, mais surtout un grand ami, un complice, pour ce témoignage beaucoup trop élogieux. I became a journalist after 5 years spent as a QSO volunteer in Africa and Bangladesh. In 1974, CIDA, the Canadian Development Agency, offered me a job in Ottawa. I still remember walking in their offices, a huge wide floor divided in little cubicles where dozens of civil servants toiled. Suddenly, my enthusiasm for joining the federal bureaucracy waned. In fact, a quote from Edgar Faure, who had been a minister under de Gaulle, came to mind. Immobility is on the march, and nothing can stop it. So I declined the offer and wrote to the director of Le Devoir, who was then Claude Ryan, hoping for a job as a journalist. Why journalism? To see the world and be part of the action. Why Le Devoir? Because in my idealistic view, that newspaper, created by Henri Bourassa, epitomized le journal de combat par excellence. In fact, in his first editorial, in which he outlined the mission of Le Devoir, Bourassa wrote, "Débusquer les coquins, drive out the rascals." That's a good masterhead. So I met Ryan. It was in early June. He explained to me that he was hiring me for the summer in replacement of reporters gone on holidays. It would be only in October that he would know if he could or not offer me a permanent job. Well, October came, so did the reporters, and Claude Ryan invited me to lunch. "Do you mind eating at 11?" he asked. "We will eat at Murray's next door. They serve breakfast until 11:30, and it is much cheaper than lunch." He added, "Do you like scrambled eggs?" At the end of the lunch, I understood that I had to look for a job. Short as it was, my stay at Le Devoir gave me la piqûre, as we say in French, and made me realize how journalism can affect change. You dig out the facts, get someone to speak out, confront the scammers or the authorities, you write the story, it gets printed and read, and lo and behold, change takes place. What an exhilarating job. It still is. To be a Washington correspondent in 1977 meant that I had to learn and master the intricacies of softwood lumber exports, tariffs on dairy products, the auto pact, the mining industry, the depollution of the Great Lakes, in short, major issue of a mind-numbing boredom. There are certain topics and issues, it seems, that will never die between Canada and our great neighbor to the south. It came to the conclusion of all this is boredom is an essential component to peace between friendly countries. It is also part of the Canadian angles that our respective medias in Canada are so obsessed with in Washington. I never ceased to look beyond them, and thanks to my boss at La Presse at the time, Claude Saint-Laurent, who's with us tonight, I had the freedom in Washington to write on all kinds of topics, Iran among them. And my life changed as a correspondent after the publication of the Canadian paper. If I had chosen journalism to affect change, I fully realized it in 1980. There's a proverb in French that says, "Le hasard en journalisme est le fruit du jugement," which roughly translates into luck in journalism is the fruit of judgment. To better explain this, I will speak about golfing. I only played twice in my life. But on the second occasion, the ball went straight into the hole, to the great astonishment of my colleague and anchor of enquête, Alain Gravel, who's an expert at the sport. He told me angrily, "It will never happen to you again." I understood then and there why people keep playing golf. They hope either to achieve a hole-in-one or to repeat the experience. It's the same in journalism. But journalism is more rewarding on the long term than golf. I have been privileged over the last 25 years to work at Radio-Canada and lead programs like Le Point, Le Téléjournal, and Enquête, or to be part of the team that led to the production of extraordinary in-house documentaries like A People History of Canada, The Breaking Point that tells the history of the 95 referendum, or The Eighth Fire on the plight and great achievements of Aboriginal peoples in Canada. I had the privilege to work with one of the greatest journalists and producer, Mark Starovich, and together, and backed by Claude Saint-Laurent, who had then moved from La Presse to Radio-Canada, and we succeeded in joining our teams in one collective and creative effort beyond the language barriers. If I have one single regret, it is the dissolution of the CBC Radio-Canada cross-cultural programs. These documentaries can only be produced by the public broadcasters. If I have one hope, it is that we can and should revive them in the greatest interest of our fundamental mandate as a public service. To conclude, let me speak about the future. A French humorist once said, "Journalists are like young kids. They ask immense questions and satisfy themselves with simplistic answers." In these days of alternative facts, fake news, intolerant speeches, blatantly racist commentaries aired on once respectable channels, it is heartening to observe that honest, fact-based, rigorous, and courageous journalism is bouncing back. Whereas over the last 20 years, with the apparition of social medias, an oxymoron in many ways, traditional journalism went through an almost life-and-death crisis. The newsroom, as we knew them, saw their ranks shrivel, revenues cratered, and all kinds of half-baked solutions came to life to jugulate the hemorrhage. Strong medias coldly confronted the crisis with the only solution available, strong content. Investigation of real relevance, foreign coverage, and, yes, solid internet contents that transcend superficiality. I am, as the head of Enquête, particularly proud of one initiative called Radical Sharing among competing medias all over the world. Here in Canada, the Toronto Star, the CBC, and Radio-Canada have joined together to give the most impact to the disclosure of the Panama Papers. Individually, we could not have hope for a greater success. La mondialisation de la productivité a provoqué la mondialisation de la fraude fiscale. Comme journalistes, nous ne pouvions le dénoncer, preuve à l'appui, qu'en mettant en commun nos ressources et nos talents respectifs. Je suis fier que cet effort entre ces trois grandes entreprises de presse canadiennes soit reconnu du fait que nous sommes finalistes au prix Michener 2017. This award celebrates the work and dedication of many friends and colleagues, among them Claude Adams, who was a colleague in Washington and with whom I wrote the Canadian caper, Alain Sionnier, who created Enquête, Claudine Blais, the executive producer of Enquête, Marie-Maude Denis and Isabelle Richer, our two anchors, and all the journalists I have the privilege to work with in news and public affairs. I thank you all for this honor, and merci beaucoup.